This is a maple tree, and this is maple syrup. How does it go from trees to the top of your pancakes? I'm Akshay, and in this episode, I want to explain to you how maple syrup actually is made and why it is so deliciously sweet. Let's start off with a brief explanation of maple trees and what maple syrup really is. Maple syrup is just sap. Sap is found in these maple trees, and it's filled with sugar and carbohydrates. You see, when a tree is living, it does photosynthesis to produce food for itself. It takes in sunlight and carbon dioxide from its leaves and produces oxygen and sugar. That sugar, just like humans, is stored inside of us to use for later. For example, humans have fat, so this tree, that sap is like water mixed with all this sugar and carbohydrates and other nutrients. And that sap is stored inside of the tree's trunk. It's stored in the really middle of the tree. That's why when you're trying to get maple syrup, to drill to the middle of the tree. So since the maple syrup is in the middle of the tree, and when it starts to turn fall, the maple trees lose all their leaves, and when it starts to get colder, that sap starts to get closer and closer to each other, and it starts to kind of fill up the bottom of the tree. Then, when it's springtime again and the temperatures start to warm up, the sap rises back up into the leaves and the branches to produce new leaves, and that cycle just keeps going on and on and on again. What humans do is they take that sap during like the fall and winter months, they tap the trees, which means that they drill a hole in the trees and put a little spout in it. And when that happens, they're able to collect that sap as it's expanding when it starts to get warmer and cooler. And that's how we collect sap. Now that sap isn't really maple syrup yet. It's not even close to being maple syrup. So how do we actually get that sap to maple syrup? Well, that's all thanks to boiling it down. So when they take all that sap, there are many gallons of sap, and those gallons of sap go into this giant boiler. And what they do is they boil the maple syrup off until it's only the sugar and a little bit of water left. And that is what we call maple syrup. All those sugars and everything in that naturally occur inside the tree, they come out to be maple syrup, which we love on our pancakes and waffles, right? Now that we know where maple syrup comes from and how it's actually turned into maple syrup from that sap to syrup, how is it so sweet and how is it so delicious that we put it on our pancakes and it makes it just so sweet. Just imagine those mornings that you wake up and to the smell of pancakes and syrup. Oh, it's so good. Well, maple syrup is so sweet because of the trees that it comes from. As I told you before, this tree stores energy in that sap. And they do that by collecting sugar in that. So their carbohydrates that come from their process of photosynthesis, it gets stored in that sap. And when humans tap that sap, it turns into maple syrup. And when you boil it down, it kind of enhances the sugars so that it's sweet. It's sweet. It's all naturally occurring. It's so cool that maple trees can produce something that's so deliciously sweet. All we need to do is boil it down, and we have this delicious maple syrup. I can smell those pancakes from over here. Okay, I'm gonna go eat some breakfast. Those delicious pancakes and that fresh maple syrup. But before I go, let's review what we learned in this episode. We learned that maple syrup comes from maple trees and the sap. And that sap is what they boil down to make, you guessed it, maple syrup. Maple syrup is so sweet because of all the carbohydrates and sugar that are inside of it. As a tree produces energy through photosynthesis, it stores some of that leftover sugars for later, during spring, to make more leaves and flowers. And that's what we get, and it's super sweet. Even the boiling enhances that sweetness. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Spectacular Science. Spectacular Science is produced and hosted by me, Akshay J. Raman. Our theme song and additional music are by Charan Ramachandran. Visit spectacularsci.com, my podcast website, for more information and all of our episodes. Subscribe and share this podcast with your friends and family. Thank you so much. And we'll see you on the next episode of Spectacular Science next week. Bye!